box in the car park at Stranraer Harbour yesterday, and I want to announce a £10 reward for anyone who finds it. You might put it on eBay, you might find a buyer, but you'll not get a more grateful man than me to retake possession of it. I've got another one coming tomorrow or Monday, but I grew attached to that soapbox and I'm very cross with the person who left it behind. The second breaking news is this. At 10 o'clock tonight on BBC Scotland, I'm on Scot Squad. That's right, the chief himself interviews me under caution in a very beautiful part of Perthshire. And I haven't seen the cut. I hope they haven't unkindly edited me, but it was very, very funny. It is, in my opinion, by far and away the best thing on television in Scotland, even if I wasn't on it. But tonight I am, along with other political figures in this election. Other leaders are available, but they're not that great. And that's one of the reasons why I'm in this field, in this campaign. We'll come back to that subject. Final announcement is that next Tuesday at 7 o'clock, just before the leaders' debates, because of course I can't get into the leaders' debates. I'm only the person that would get them actually some ratings. I'm only the person that would subject to uh, proper questioning the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon. But hey, after 50 years in politics, a lot of them here in Scotland, I'm not good enough to be in the leaders' debates. But I am going to be interviewed on the sofa by some old friends on BBC Scotland on Tuesday evening. So please do watch that. On now to the main burden of my remarks. Here in the Scottish borders, it scarcely needs to be said that the prospect of a hard border between here and England is almost literally insanity. It was never a good idea any time. That's why the people of the borders have comprehensively rejected it in greater numbers than anywhere else in Scotland over many decades. But to do it now would almost be the definition of insanity. This is a town that depends on its tourism and hospitality. Where do you think the tourists and those seeking hospitality come from? Do they come from Slovakia? Do they come from Bulgaria or Romania? Or do they come from England? The products and services produced here and indeed across the border, where do they go? Do they go to Bulgaria or do they go to the rest of the United Kingdom? I'm asking these questions, but you already know the answers to them. 65% of all of Scotland's product and services is sold in the rest of the United Kingdom. It's an English-speaking union in which we have played a very significant part and wield disproportionate power and influence. I'm glad to say I was once at Westminster a part of that. When I represented Yarrow shipbuilders on the Clyde, the Ministry of Defence were sick looking at me, battering on their door, demanding more Type 23 frigates and demanding that they be built on the Clyde. We have risen with the union with England. The beautiful sight behind me is a sight from Scotland's past. Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon want to live in Scotland's past. So let's examine Scotland's past. When there was a hard border between Scotland and England, before the Union in 1707, life was hell for people on both sides of that border. The border reivers, wars. I'm talking centuries of wars and serious wars. One just outside Lockerbie cost the lives of 700 people, many of them burned alive in a church. Yes, in a church. Borders bring lawlessness. They bring strife and division. They bring smuggling. They bring violence. And in the case of the SNP's prospectus to join the European Union, they'll bring much more than that. Scotland's deficit last week reached a figure 8 times higher than the permitted deficit for entry into the European Union. That's right, 8 times greater than the permitted deficit, which means that in order to get into the European Union, Scotland would have to cut its deficit by 7/8. Now, we are a country with a tax base so small and so weak that we can scarcely fund the public services that we actually enjoy today. The life that we enjoy is funded by the Exchequer in London, which gives our people more than £2,000 per head more than the citizens of the United Kingdom in other parts of the country. We have a gigantic deficit, 8 times more than the EU allows. We have a tax base where only half of the people in Scotland actually pay tax, and half of the others are working for and being paid by others in that 50% that pay tax. The public services, the NHS and local government, central government, the Ministry of Defence contracts, on highways and so on. The idea that a country of 5 million people, where only half of them pay tax, could enjoy the same life that we enjoy today is, of course, economic illiteracy, innumeracy, madness. But to some people, none of that matters, or rather, at a distance, none of that matters. But if you woke up and the separatists had won, and Scotland had been ripped out of the United Kingdom, that £2,000 plus disappears like that in a puff of smoke. If you woke up to find that companies and high net worth individuals had fled south of the border, maybe just over the border, it's quite nice there, trust me, you would wake up to an economic nightmare. And that's before we talk about the hard border. Because I'm inviting you on a flight of fancy with me. Scotland has satisfied the European Union and cut its deficit by 7/8 and has satisfied Spain that it should not veto Scotland's entry into the European Union, even though this would be a major driver of separatism in Spain and in other countries, in Belgium, in Germany, in Italy. Let's imagine Scotland with those so persuasive leaders of ours has managed to get entry into the European Union when the rest of the United Kingdom has already left it. What does that spell except a hard border? Now, don't be silly and deny that, like Nicola Sturgeon just did today with some cockamamie comparison to the border in the middle of the Irish Sea, which she seems to think is working so well, even though there's practically rioting across Northern Ireland. As a result of it, let's imagine that we are in the European Union. We're back to free movement of East European labour, coming to Ecclefechan, not just for the delights of Ecclefechan, but for the prospect of at some stage being able to get over the border into England, where freedom of movement has been abolished. Where do these East European, Central European would-be workers in Manchester, in Birmingham, in London, where do they go? Well, they're waiting for the chance to get across that border on the back of a truck, to get across that wall with a rope ladder. Where do they go? They come here to the Scottish borders, and Jedburgh becomes Calais. Jedburgh becomes Sangat. Jedburgh becomes a jungle. Is that what you want? Because that's what would happen. Because the people that came here would love it for a little while, but that's not why they came here. They came here to earn bigger money south of what would then have to be a hard border. Who imagines that a hard border between Scotland and England could be a good idea? Who imagines that? Well, the SNP imagine it in this very area. Emma Harper, the SNP candidate, said it would be a good thing to have a border because it would create jobs. Yes, jobs for border guards, jobs for German Shepherd dogs patrolling the border. It would create jobs, she said, making barbed wire and so on. What madness is this? It's SNP madness. It's Alba madness. That's what it is. Now, I've probably convinced you that a hard border between Scotland and England is a bad idea. So now I need to convince you of how we can stop it. Well, it's actually in your hands to stop it. Next Thursday, you can vote to stop it. But here's how you have to do it. You have to vote on the purple lilac ballot paper for the best placed candidate to defeat the SNP. You may have to hold your nose. I'm going to. I'm voting for Finlay Carson, the Tory candidate. Imagine me voting Tory. I'll have to hold my nose, cross my fingers, cross my toes, but I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it because it's Finlay Carson or the SNP. Tories are for Christmas. Separatism is forever. So I'm voting Tory with my lilac-coloured ballot. You should vote for the person best able to defeat the SNP. And then you get a second vote on the peach-coloured, orange-coloured ballot paper. And there you should vote for the rounder. If I can just take this rounder. Here is our symbol. We're third top of the ballot paper. We are all for unity. We're a coalition of left, of right, of centre, of working class people like me, of military officers and landowners like Jamie Blackett, the number 2 on our list in the south of Scotland. Like Dr. Bruce Halliday, a GP, highly respected GP in Dumfries for more than 20 years. We are what we describe as an alliance. We don't agree on some things. Matter of fact, we don't agree on quite a few things. But we agree on the big thing in Scottish politics. The big thing, the big question is ending this never-ending. Getting off this hamster wheel. Avoiding Scotland in ruins, which is what the consequence of separatism would be. And it would be nowhere more dramatically shown than here in the south of Scotland. Here's my last point. We had a set of original ideas which have changed the political weather in Scotland. One was tactical voting and a plan to carry it out. A second was a Clarity Act, which would lay out the conditions that would necessarily apply to any future referendum after a generation has passed. And it's a very different kind of referendum to the one David Cameron very foolishly agreed to back in 2014. But here's another of our original policies. It's controversial, but it's correct. Nicola Sturgeon said Scotland didn't want to be dragged out of the European Union against its will. Well, here's where that boomerang comes back to her. Places like Jedburgh are not going to be dragged out of the United Kingdom against its will. The south of Scotland will not be dragged out of the United Kingdom against its will. And there are many other places, I suspect, starting in Orkney and Shetland. But in many other parts of this country, we will not be dragged out of Britain against our will. And only our alliance, All for Unity, has a plan for that. You'll remember that Nicola Sturgeon demanded a people's vote to confirm the details of Brexit. Well, there would have to be a people's vote to confirm the details of separatism. And in that people's vote, we demand that those regions of Scotland that want to remain in the United Kingdom must have the right to do so. Many may. The south of Scotland will. Of that I am sure. And it's only us that will fight for the inclusion of that option to be in any Clarity Act that is passed in the House of Commons. It's been wonderful talking to you again. Tomorrow we'll be in Pennycook, we'll be in different parts of the south of Scotland, in the Midlothian area, in the part of Midlothian that is in our constituency. But you'll catch me on Scot Squad at 10 o'clock tonight. I promise you it would be a serious offence to miss it. Thank you very much indeed. For